Welcome to the Master Channel. In this short video, we'll show you how vibe modeling lets you chat your way into diagrams. In recent years, we as analysts and architects have used many different types of technical diagrams to tell our stories and explain our business and systems. Think about BPMN for mapping business processes and C4 for visualizing software architecture at different levels of detail. Creating and maintaining these models and diagrams has always been a challenge. Since the introduction of generative AI, multiple new opportunities have arisen. In the same way that we can create beautiful images and videos, and similar to creating a website from a prompt, the question comes up, why can't we use an LLM, a large language model, to create models and diagrams? Let's call it vibe modeling. The idea is simple. Use an LLM's conversational abilities and its reasoning power to create diagrams. For instance, let's use the following prompt. Create a BPMN diagram of a fulfill order process. And boom, magic happens behind the scenes. This LLM uses its knowledge to combine domain insight about fulfill order processes with the syntax and semantics of BPMN, and it produces a beautiful diagram. However, there was no magic. The results were extremely disappointing. This is not what a good BPMN diagram should look like. Let's look at another example. LLMs are strong at generating text or code-based answers, so we test that first. Let's say we ask an LLM to generate all BPMN diagram elements for a process about a hospital service desk. The LLM responds with a written summary of the BPMN model, listing participants, steps, decisions, and more. It uses its domain knowledge to fill in sensible details. Great. Now imagine we ask it to visualize a BPMN chart for the same case by slightly changing our prompt. And boom, the LLM generates this great-looking BPMN diagram. At first sight, this looks great, but let's take a closer look. If we zoom in on the generated diagram, we immediately notice some problems. There are multiple non-existing words in the diagram. The flow goes backwards on multiple occasions. The OR gate isn't explained well enough, so the logic becomes unclear. The list goes on. Missing end events, arrows with no arrowheads, and connections that don't make sense. What this shows us is that LLMs aren't very good at creating these specific diagrams on their own, at least not reliably. However, one thing has become clear in recent years. LLMs are great at coding, so why not use that ability to generate better models? By now we've learned that today's technology still struggles to generate real technical diagrams. Remember what we did in our first examples. Asking an LLM to directly create a visual mostly leads to poor results. So instead, let's make use of the LLM's ability to generate code, not code to build software, but code that describes a diagram. There are multiple text-based diagramming languages out there, but I'll come back to them later. Of course, this diagram code is not the diagram itself. To visualize it, we still need a renderer that transforms the code into an actual diagram. Think about tools like Mermaid or PlantUML. If we want to update the diagram, we can simply edit our original prompt and let the LLM regenerate the code. That makes iteration fast, even if you're not an expert in the diagram syntax. And in most rendering tools, the code remains editable. With a little syntax knowledge, we can even tweak the diagram directly inside the tool without going back to the LLM. Let's now showcase the vibe modeling approach with a real-life example. Suppose you want to visualize a sequence diagram for a multi-factor authentication procedure, but you're not familiar with the syntax. In that case, you can ask an LLM to generate the PlantUML code for the diagram. This LLM returns a correct PlantUML snippet, which you can then use in a rendering tool to produce the visual. The resulting sequence diagram, generated by PlantUML, is shown here. Let's take a closer look. As you can see, the generated diagram looks complete from the start. PlantUML defines the logic, while the PlantUML server controls the visual presentation and layout. A manual review is still needed, as always with AI-generated output. You want to validate that the scenario matches your real system and that no steps are missing. Even so, the semantics are correct on the first attempt, which is impressive. With this approach, the diagram is much better than if an LLM tried to generate it visually by itself. We can edit our model by modifying the diagramming code directly in the tool. In PlantUML, for example, we can adjust the code in the editor, and in some tools the diagrams can also be edited manually through drag and drop, but more on that later. Of course, we can also update the model by changing our original LLM prompt and regenerating the diagram. This gives you two ways of working: quick prompt-based edits, or precise manual edits in the syntax. Let's look at another example, where we again use an LLM and a renderer. We want to generate a power interest matrix for our ERP system. We ask ChatGPT to generate a Graphviz code that Graphviz Online can render. ChatGPT provides us with the code, which we can paste into the Graphviz Online editor. And we get a good diagram, exactly like we wanted: clean, readable, and consistent. And you can easily make changes to the diagram by adjusting the code in the interface of the renderer. If you compare this diagram, where we used both an LLM and a renderer, to a diagram directly provided by an LLM, the difference is clear. The diagram after using both an LLM and a renderer, which is shown on the left, is clearly better than the one on the right, for which we only used an LLM, because the renderer enforces the rules and handles the layout. Now that we know how vibe modeling works, we can improve the quality of our diagrams even more by using better prompting. Simply put, prompting is not dead yet. When stating your intent, it's important to provide the LLM with enough context and detail, so it doesn't have room for interpretation. That means specifying actors, steps, relationships, and constraints, making sure nothing is left open or ambiguous. Let's start with a basic prompt, where we explain our system at a high level, without much context or detail. We ask ChatGPT to generate PlantUML code for a use case diagram for my online pizzeria system. After asking ChatGPT to generate the code and feeding it into PlantUML, the result is a fairly basic diagram, one that still contains several unclear elements and that may miss important steps. To obtain a better diagram, we can improve our prompt using established prompting frameworks. Let's look at this example prompt. Here, we apply the Crispy framework, where we provide the LLM with context, role, instructions, scope, parameters, and examples. In short, this structure helps us clearly define what we want, how it should behave, and the constraints it must follow. This approach leads to noticeably better results. This diagram is better because it shows what actually happens when you order a pizza. You pick a place, choose a pizza, enter your address, and pay. It also makes it clear who's involved at each step and what parts of the flow are mandatory. After discussing our vibe modeling approach, you might be wondering, isn't there a way to skip the LLM step and directly chat your way to diagrams? There is. Some tools skip the need for an external LLM and let you chat directly with them. This is already very popular for coding. Tools like Lovable, Bolt, or Replit are often used as vibe coding tools, where you just chat your way to a web app. That same approach is used by some tools for modeling. Tools like Eraser.io or Mermaid.ai have built-in AI chat that you can use to create visuals. Let's take a closer look at the first one, Eraser.io. This is the Eraser.io interface. Here, you can build diagrams manually, but you can also use the AI diagram option to generate a diagram based on a text prompt. You can start by choosing a diagram type. The default option is Auto-Detect, but you can also specify the diagram type directly in your prompt, or even ask the AI which diagram type it recommends. After this, you describe your visual as clearly and completely as possible. The more context you provide, the better the result, and the fewer assumptions the tool needs to make. Let's ask the AI to generate a simple BPMN diagram for a package delivery process from the perspective of the post office. It's a very simple example, but the lack of context leaves a lot of room for interpretation. The AI will ask some follow-up questions to narrow the scope and avoid making unnecessary assumptions. These questions are optional, but they help the AI align with your expectations. Note that in our example, the questions are very general because our prompt was very general as well. We answer the questions and click the Generate button to get our result. Here we see the diagram generated by the Eraser AI. The diagram looks pretty good overall, apart from a few style choices we might want to adjust. We can edit the diagram manually using drag and drop. Another option is to edit the code directly by opening the diagram's editing interface. As a third option, we can continue chatting with the AI assistant and provide an edit prompt to update the diagram. This is especially useful for bulk changes, like renaming multiple elements, adding new steps, or restructuring parts of the workflow without editing everything one by one. However, like most AI tools, Eraser.io is not free. If you want to use it without limitations, you'll need a paid plan. We are almost at the end of the video, but before we wrap up, here is an overview of which modeling notations work well as text-based diagrams and which ones still rely on interchange formats. For UML and ERDs, tools like PlantUML and Mermaid make it pretty easy to generate diagrams straight from text. But for BPMN, DMN, and CMMN, you usually end up using the official XML formats, and then you're back to layout and rendering headaches. C4 and DFDs sit somewhere in the middle. They are decent text options, but they're not always fully standardized. That's it for our video on vibe modeling. If you want to learn more about AI, BPMN, process discovery, and much more, check out our website, the Master Channel. See you there.